There's something about Gemini that people always get wrong. They think Gemini is two-faced, unpredictable, hard to pin down. But what if I told you the real reason behind all of this has nothing to do with personality, and everything to do with how their mind works? If you've ever wondered why Gemini can be the most interesting person in the room one moment and the most confusing person the next, why they connect instantly but detach just as fast, why they're brilliant but chaotic, why they make you feel understood in seconds and misunderstood in minutes, then stay exactly where you are. Because we're about to break down the best and the worst of Gemini in a way that finally makes sense. And once you hear this, you won't see Gemini the same way again, not your friend, not your partner, not the Gemini you're trying to understand, and definitely not yourself if you are one. Let's get into it. There's something unmistakably alive about Gemini. They move fast, think fast, speak fast, and somehow manage to stay 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Being around them feels like tapping into a stream of ideas that never stops flowing, fascinating, unpredictable, a little chaotic, and undeniably captivating. People assume Gemini is simple because they're social, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Gemini is one of the most complex signs in the zodiac. Their greatest strength and their most difficult weaknesses often stem from the exact same place, their mind. Ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication, curiosity, logic, and adaptability, every aspect of Gemini's personality starts from mental activity. Their best qualities and their most frustrating ones are rooted in the way their brain processes the world. Gemini's most impressive strength is their mind, sharp, flexible, and fast. They're the ones who walk into any situation and instantly read the room. They catch small details others overlook, tone shifts, body language changes, contradictions, social currents. Their observational skills are exceptional. And because they can adjust instantly, Gemini becomes one of the easiest signs to talk to. If you're shy, they lighten the atmosphere. If you're funny, they bounce back effortlessly. If you're deep, they dive in without hesitation. They don't force the mood or dominate it, instead, they shape it naturally. Their flexibility makes them incredible problem solvers. Where others see a single path, Gemini sees multiple. They find loopholes, alternative strategies, and creative angles. They are logical without being rigid, imaginative without being unrealistic, a rare combination. One of their most underrated abilities is their talent for shifting perspectives. They can switch viewpoints in an instant. This makes them excellent communicators, negotiators, and mediators. They don't get stuck in emotional rigidity, they pivot, rethink, and adapt in ways that feel effortless. Being around Gemini feels energizing because they keep things moving. They stir ideas, create momentum, and bring lightness into heavy spaces. They know how to shift the mood without dismissing it, changing the angle just enough to make everything feel manageable again. But here's the irony, the exact qualities that make Gemini magnetic are the same ones that cause their greatest challenges. Because Gemini adapts quickly, they also detach quickly. If something stops stimulating their mind, their interest fades without warning. This creates the impression of inconsistency, unpredictability, or even unreliability, but in truth, it's simply the speed at which their brain shifts focus. Life's slow moments challenge Gemini. Repetition drains them. Silence feels uncomfortable. Predictability presses on them like weight. Restlessness appears the moment things become too still, and this restlessness can show up as forcing newness, losing interest mid-process, leaving projects unfinished, mentally checking out before saying anything, or drifting emotionally even when they don't intend to. The Gemini mind is like a browser with dozens of tabs open, all active, all updating, all pinging for attention. It's impressive, but undeniably chaotic. Another one of Gemini's pitfalls is their tendency to overthink while telling themselves they're being rational. They evaluate everything, replay conversations, analyze possibilities, and mentally argue both sides of a situation before acting. This can lead to indecision, hesitation, and spiraling thought patterns that take them further away from clarity. When emotionally cornered, Gemini uses communication as both armor and weapon. Their words become quick, sharp, and precise. They know exactly how to win an argument or dodge emotional pressure. They rarely intend to hurt, but they do intend to escape. Their quick logic often overshadows their emotions, giving the impression that Gemini doesn't feel deeply. But that's not true. Their thoughts simply move faster than their feelings can anchor. Gemini can be socially everywhere yet emotionally nowhere. They connect widely and easily, but forming deep attachment takes time. They enjoy conversation but avoid topics that pin them down. They're present and engaged until something shifts internally, and suddenly they're distant, quiet, or gone. To understand Gemini fully, you have to look at the mechanics beneath the personality. Gemini is driven by mental stimulation, not emotional steadiness. This doesn't make them shallow, it makes them information-based. They thrive on ideas, movement, perspectives, and possibilities. Their brain is always scanning for input, and when that input slows, everything else slows with it. This need for mental movement explains why they talk the way they do, why they detach suddenly, why they change direction fast, why they seem unpredictable. When life becomes repetitive, Gemini feels trapped. Stagnation is their emotional enemy. Stillness feels like pressure. Predictability feels like a cage. Their so-called duality isn't two personalities, it's two processing modes: outward, fast, expressive curiosity, and inward, quiet, analytical detachment. They switch depending on what the moment requires. But to outsiders, these shifts look like inconsistency. Gemini isn't unstable, they're responsive. Their mind mirrors their environment, taking shape based on the energy around them. Gemini often withdraws not because they don't care, but because they're overwhelmed. Emotional heaviness triggers their analytical mode. They step back to sort things mentally, not to avoid responsibility. But because they do it internally, people assume they're being evasive. They also struggle with completing things not because they're unreliable, but because their mind values exploration over completion. Once the curiosity is satisfied, the momentum dissolves. They're fueled by discovery, not destination. Put Gemini in an environment that offers novelty, movement, conversation, and intellectual stimulation, and they become one of the most brilliant, adaptable, creative personalities in the zodiac. Their best and worst traits all stem from the same core mechanism, the need for mental motion. Once you understand that, everything falls into place. Their charm, their chaos, their wit, their unpredictability, their creativity, and their contradictions all make sense through that lens. Gemini isn't meant to be pinned down or molded into emotional linearity. They're meant to be understood as dynamic. They are air, shifting, moving, adapting. When you stop expecting emotional structure from them and instead appreciate their mental flow, you begin to see the real Gemini: brilliant, curious, sharp, inconsistent, adaptable, and surprisingly loyal to people who can match their rhythm. The best of Gemini brings life, movement, ideas, and perspective. The worst of Gemini brings confusion, inconsistency, and overload. But the truth of Gemini reveals a system, not chaos. They're not two-faced, they're two-speed. They're not disloyal, they're disengaged when unstimulated. They're not manipulative, they're reactive. They're not emotionless, they're led by logic. Love a Gemini with mental engagement and clarity, and you'll experience one of the most exciting, refreshing relationships possible. Try to cage them, silence them, or slow them down too much, and you'll meet their chaos. The duality of Gemini is not a flaw, it's a design. A fast, efficient, fascinating system. And once you see it, you'll never misunderstand Gemini again.